All right, I was going to ask you some Q&A this morning, Michael. We've just come off our videos on motivation, which we recorded this morning, and they're great. I can't wait to publish them on the channel.
Great.
And whilst doing the videos, quite often I come up with a few questions, and they sort of prompt me to think about other things we could talk about.
Yep.
But one of the first questions I have for you today is you speak about motivation in general, but what actually motivates you?
I think I have a very strong desire of achievement. So say, for instance, with the YouTube channel and my training that I'm doing, my business coaching, I have a great sense of achievement when people respond and tell me that they're getting a lot out of it and they're implementing.
Yep, feedback.
Right?
Yeah.
And in relation to my business coaching, a couple of the businesses that I'm working very closely with now are doing very well. So from starting date, which is about 15 months ago with some of them, to today, one of them in particular has doubled their income, their monthly turnover. I feel very, very satisfied that I've been a very small part of that in getting them to where they are now. So a sense of achievement is probably the first thing for me. The second part of that would be to have a lifestyle that I believe my family and I deserve, but a lifestyle that will afford me the time to do the things for others that I want to do. And one of my goals daily is to try and do something for somebody that can never ever repay me back. So by having a better lifestyle and earning a better income allows me to do that more often.
That's great. So this, I can see clearly that a lot of your motivation is now based on altruism, giving back to others. Is this something that you've developed recently as your new phase of development personally, or is it something you've always had from early on?
Oh no, I think I've always had it.
Yeah.
Because my dad and mum are very giving. My parents, as you know, I was adopted at 10 weeks old. My father still gives to the adoption agency that they got me from 55 years ago.
Yeah.
Still today.
Yeah. Right.
So they are very ingratiated that they had the opportunity to get my sister Anne and I, and they still give back in that. So they are very, they're very thoughtful, my parents, to where they're at, and I think that's passed on to my sister and I. Yeah,
because you often talk about your gratitude for your parents having giving you that opportunity in life and
absolutely
having adopted you, and that's obviously carried through all your life, and maybe a sense of wanting to reciprocate somehow to others.
I think there's a fine line with being silly about it.
Yes.
That can really compromise you.
Yes.
But I think, and it sounds corny because you hear it a lot, but living with gratitude is important. So I live with an attitude of gratitude.
Yes.
Yeah, and I take nothing for granted, as I said on that day that we did the rant in the car.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take nothing for granted. So the office I sit in, you working with me, Mary working with me daily is a blessing. All those sorts of things. So have I built it? Yes, I have. But the fact of the matter is that I've now got a network and a component of people that I trust and love. I don't take that for granted. So therefore, and that allows me to do some other things. And look, I probably should do more than I do now, to be perfectly honest. But I try and make sure that everyone around me is better off for having been with me.
Yeah, that's great. And in terms of business motivation, obviously you're still actively working on many projects to this day. Has that changed over the years? Do you approach your motivation in a different way?
I'm probably more calculated with it now that I'm older.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not as bombastic or flamboyant, for the want of a better term.
Do you think you need that kind of attitude to succeed in the first place, though?
I think it's different for all people.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been drawn to people who are a bit charismatic.
Yes.
Right? But charisma is good, motivation is good, and integrity is good. And if you get those three things in one individual, I think you're doing well. And there's a few people that I know like that. And my personal development coach, Dr. Fred, I consider in that league. So therefore, I always come away from seeing Fred extremely motivated, super impressed at his integrity, right? And he's in his early 80s and he's super motivated. Yeah. So those things just keep me going. I always walk away from him feeling inspired. And that's why socialisation and networking is very, very important, because you are who you mix with.
Yeah.
So I always say about Fred, because I met Fred very early in my real estate career, Fred taught me more about real estate than any other individual I know, but he doesn't know anywhere near as much as I know about it.
Yeah, that's great.
But he made me think about it in a very different light.
Yeah.
So hopefully I can do that for others.
Yeah, and you often talk about Fred and he's obviously your mentor. Do you think everybody needs a mentor?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Unequivocally, absolutely. And sometimes one's not enough.
Yes.
You might need more than one mentor, because you might not be able to get everything from one person.
Yes.
So in relation to those sort of things, what tends to happen as we get busier and busier and busier, we tend to forget how important mentors are. And if you have a look at guys like, the tennis players, Federer and Nadal, those guys have had lulls in their careers and come back, but they've all got mentors and coaches.
Yes.
And look at where those two are today, again.
Yep.
So both their stories are inspirational, because I believe those two really understand the coach-mentor thing.
Yeah, and someone like Kyrgios can probably learn from that. It'd be a lot better if you had proper mentoring and coaching. That's an example of someone that's got innate talent and got all the ability, but is slightly off the rails because he doesn't have that mentoring and that constant coaching.
You need some guidance, and also too, sometimes with your coaches and mentors, you need to be able to have a leap of faith, because not everything that they may tell you may resonate with you. And that's where, and I've quoted this before, but when I first saw Anthony Robbins about 25 years ago, one of the things he said that stuck with me is, to be successful in business or in life, you need to think about it. And when you break that down in its core element, what he's really saying is we tend to do things without thinking about them. Think about what you do.
Another thing I'm interested to know, does motivation rub off? Obviously, you've got that energy and the drive, and what you're doing on YouTube is a great influence to so many people. Do you think in the workplace and the people that you surround yourself with, their motivation can rub off on others?
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's part of socialisation. I think, generally as human beings, we're social creatures and we need to mix with people. And I think when you are rubbing shoulders with people that are getting on with it, so to speak, it tends to rub off. I believe it rubs off, and it's contagious.
Yeah. So are the things that you do to your staff and in your training in particular, what are the things that you would do if somebody comes to you lacking motivation? Is there particular steps that you can implement for them? Obviously, people have to have a certain degree of their own impetus to do things, but how do you spark that and give them that self-worth and that sense of motivation? Is there a particular thing, just the talks themselves? Is it awareness?
My belief around that is this, is that the people that I coach, I say to them, and it sort of goes something, it's fairly simplistic, but it works for me. If home is good and work is average, work is more than tolerable.
Yeah.
If home is good and work is shitty, work is tolerable. So what you need is your foundation to be solid. And for me, home is the foundation. So if my home life is good and I put time and effort and concentration into it, no matter what happens to me at work, I can cope with that. So generally speaking, to get people motivated that aren't motivated, I generally try and find out what I can do as their employer or business coach to assist them in getting their home life better. That's really where I start.
Yeah. And what about if you've got someone that's just not inspired? It's nothing to do with their home life. They've got a relatively, normal life, but they're just not inspired and they seem to lack motivation. And you're talking before about the incentives, the carrot and the stick that no longer work. What can you do now to sort of motivate people that don't seem to have that?
Look, and a lot of it is how much time do you put into those sort of people, and is it worthwhile doing it?
Yes.
So sometimes I wouldn't spend any time with some of those people that lack inspiration.
Yes.
Because it's just not time effective for me.
So they've got to come to you wanting to improve themselves. They've got to show
or maybe
signs.
I'll see a trait in them that they don't necessarily see, and I can bring it out in them.
Yes.
So I think part of my job, especially when I'm business coaching, is to see elements in people that I can nurture and make even better than I see them as it is in them already. Because we've all got some innate ability and we've all got some talent that maybe the next person doesn't have. So I tend to concentrate on what I'm good at, and then I get people around me on the things that I'm not necessarily good at. So will I learn things that I'm not good at? Absolutely, when the time permits. But when it doesn't, and also when I'm business coaching, right, I will try and work on the attributes that people have.
Yeah.
And then normally what I find is that when I let them know what I think they're good at and they can see they're good at it, generally that inspires them and motivates them.
Yeah. I would have assumed that people coming into the game would have an incredible amount of drive already and not necessarily require motivation. Do you think that there's something lacking in the education system, in the foundations when they come to these positions that needs to be picked up on?
I think first and foremost, and I'm not sure how it is abroad, but here, real estate over the decades has always been considered an easy option for those who couldn't find a job.
Right, yeah.
And it was also considered by some to be able to provide high income earners with high income, or potential high income earners.
So there's two different types of people that might enter. One that's just looking for a job and they've got no other options.
They need a fill-in, yep.
And they just think, well, I may as well do it. And there's others that actually know they can achieve, just deploying their own innate motivation and skill set to make that extra.
Yeah. So I think over the years what's happened is that the real estate industry has been, and probably like a lot of other industries too, has been filled with people that aren't as motivated as we'd like because it was seen as an easy option. And it's the old thing, we did, I don't know if you remember some time back, we did a video on happiness, and you asked me, what constitutes my happiness? Well, when I really thought about it, what makes me happy is to strive. That word striving makes me happy.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily always reaching the goal, though that's great,
yes.
But it's that striving and my implementation of strategy and knowledge along the way that fulfills my soul. That floats my boat. So that is striving. And I think when you go into an industry, no matter what it is, and we're talking about real estate now, and you go in half-hearted because it's a fill-in, then the ability for you to strive is not there. And I think that creates, A, a lack of motivation, and B, it's not satisfying.
And that's probably really quite common now, or more relevant now, that the industry, I think, is really functioning on the back of a great 10, 15-year real estate success story. So it's almost too easy to enter the industry and do okay at it. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, well, when I got my real estate licence, it was a 4-year course.
Yes.
Now you can get it in months.
Oh, really? It's that quick now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, and I don't know whether the education system has come that far that they can teach 4 years worth of work in months now.
Which is probably why we're seeing some people enter the industry without everything they need, all the tools they need to do.
And there's also a very large attrition. A lot of, there is a very large attrition of real estate people within the first 2 years of them entering real estate employment that leave.
Yes.
And there is also a very high failure rate of new real estate businesses that just don't make it, even in a buoyant market.
It's really hard to believe, and on the media we see so much of the success side of the story that people can't make it work. What characteristics do they need to enter the industry? Like what are the main characteristics?
I think the stuff we covered today is, people need to be filled with desire, they need to be motivated, they need to be inspired. So the coaching thing and all that stuff comes in. And one of the things I always suggest to real estate agents is, I say to them, what do you do in your downtime? And all the good real estate agents say, we educate ourselves.
Yes.
That's what they do in their downtime. They educate themselves about the real estate market across Australia, market in other states, etc. So when they're conversing with vendors and buyers, they can converse on a platform of a lot of knowledge and a very broad cross range of information. So the better real estate agents have a very good handle on the economy, not just real estate related. They have a very good handle on what's happening with government legislation and changes and policy changes, etc. And they have a very good handle on what's happening in their own community.
And that's even a cultural thing. I think in one of our previous videos we put together, you mentioned the need to learn other cultures,
Absolutely.
to experience the cuisine,
Absolutely.
to meet the people, even learn the language in some cases,
Yeah.
to be able to connect better with those people that you're servicing.
Well, everything that you do is a network. So, as I said to you once, I think I used the example, the cab driver here that drives Karen and I around, he's from northern India. Well, when I first got to meet Yogi, one of the things I did is I studied up a bit on northern Indian cuisine, etc., etc. Now, when I started talking to him, he was drawn to me purely because he hadn't had many clients that knew a lot about where he came from. Now, I did that because I value him and I saw some longevity with him too, and he's a really nice guy. But him and I have become good friends on the basis that we have a mutual respect for where each other's come from. And he did the same. Over a period of about 6 months, he started focusing on the islands that my parents came from when I told him, all that sort of stuff. And he knew a little bit about it. So our discussion when we see each other is always on a basis of friendship, but also a basis of cultural respect.
So we've just produced these 4 or 5 new videos specifically on motivation. What do you hope that our audience gets out of these videos? What's your long-term goal? What are you expecting the learning to be out of watching these series of videos? What would you hope?
What I hope to get out of it is I want to continue the journey. So I want to keep being inspired and evolve, and I want to try and give as much information off that I can. But one of my parents always used to say to me that I was the most motivated young man that they knew when I was younger, and that I'm the most motivated older man that they know now that I'm 55.
Not much has changed, obviously.
Right? Well, maybe not. But the reality of that is that I now understand, and also by doing these videos, as I said before, is my happiness is based on my striving.
Yes.
Right? And that is my core motivation, to stay happy.
Yes. And I can see you want other people to benefit from that as well. So the videos, just being able to share that knowledge, that sense of striving, sharing that is giving you some fulfillment.
Absolutely. And look, I'm not the most educated person on the planet. And I've had some good education, and I'm surrounded by quite a few academics, my wife being one of them. And that's great for me. So, but what I have been able to do, and thanks to Fred for this, is I've been able to analyse my behaviour and have a look at what works, have a look at what doesn't work. And I always say to my children, I want them to be masters of observation. Observe the people that are doing it. Observe the people that are doing it well. You don't have to reinvent the wheel because it's already been invented.
Yes.
Let's just see if we can get on the wheel and make it turn a bit quicker.
Yeah, that's great. And just one final question. You talk a lot about Dr. Fred. How did you actually meet him, and what made you decide that you needed to have mentoring in your own life? And at what point was that in your career?
When, in the early days of Stockdale and Lego Real Estate, I met Fred at a conference, and I was quite impressed. And I'd seen a lot of real estate trainers and life coaches, etc. But he resonated for me on a very, very different level. So then we started up what we call a call group, and there was about 25 of us or whatever. And it took me a long time to get on his channel, so to speak. But a lot of what he said to me along the way resonated with me. And what I was finding in the early sessions with Fred was that he was making me think about things that we weren't discussing. But his platform of discussion was invigorating other thoughts of mine. So I was A, getting inspired without knowing that was happening. B, I was getting educated. And C, I was becoming more aware of myself. And that's what he did for me. He made me aware of me.
Yes. That's one thing I noticed with you to this day, that since I've known you, you've come across as someone that's very self-aware. So he's helped you develop that self-awareness much further than you had in the early days.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the old thing, the old adage, the answer is secondary to the question.
Yes.
The question you ask yourself is the most important thing.
Yeah, that's
ask the right question to get a better answer.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. Lovely.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Michael. Great chatting.